Whoa, third bucket, which I have plopped the $150, well, I'm exaggerating, $120. Pretty cool. I like my little filter invention for a 5-gallon tank. I think it's going to be perfect. That's it. Look at that. Crutches are the worst. I highly do not recommend them. We are on a salt mixing situation here today because we're going to do water change tomorrow. In the first bucket, I've got a few buckets that I've got mixing. We've got our little $3 Amazon pump. We've got our $30 Sicce nano pump. And they're in there mixing pretty good. The water definitely has a white tinge to it, which is what you normally see when salt is not mixed. Bucket number 2 here, we've got our $10 Amazon ginormous pump, and it's mixing up like a storm. And we can kind of see, just by looking at the water column, look at that beam of light. That salt is not mixed. Let's take that over. That was a pretty good test, actually. I should have done that right over here on the first one. Yeah, the salt is definitely not mixed. So now we're gonna come to this, whoa, third bucket, which I have plopped the $150, well, I'm exaggerating, $120 J-bow pump. The water is not mixed in here either, but I'm betting. Well, let's put that on feed mode. I don't see any granulars at the bottom on this one. Looking around here, none of these buckets are really mixed very well. So they're all kind of humming along, and I don't think that there's a big conclusion on whether or not you spend more money, you're gonna get a better mixer. I think salt just takes a while before it mixes into the water. One of the things that I'm learning with the little reef bowl is that you can keep rotifers at a much higher temperature than I thought. Maybe y'all already know this. The other thing is that using a sponge filter with a very fine sponge is working just fine. So I want to test out whether or not I can keep rotifers, because if I can keep rotifers going at a nice high temperature using the same water right out of the reef, then it's going to be a nice, easy transfer when those clowns lay their eggs in the pot, when I just move it over to the 5-gallon. So what I'd like to do is take this sponge filter that has a very fine sponge on it, and I'd like to try and use a coarse sponge, because if I can use a coarse sponge, then I know water's passing through it. I'm not entirely sold. What is wrong with me? Ah! Can't get this thing to. There. My goodness. Bah! So now this is a big overkill, right? When I saw that little larvae, the little fry, it was bigger than the holes on here. Quite a bit bigger. So I'm not concerned at all. I'm using a really big sponge. That water has a lot more places to go into this sponge, and so my thinking is there's not going to be one place that's like really sucking them in. That it's just going to be a nice even flow. I don't know if that's the case 100%, but we're going to find out. So the other thing that I'm doing that I learned on one of my freshwater tanks, what I did is I had kind of a large contraption where I had some media inside here, some just like the Eheim, those little Eheim balls that I have over in the reef bowl. I had them inside here, and then I put some holes around the outside of this, and then I put the airline tube down in the middle, so that when the sponge The sponge acted as its own media. In addition, I had media that was in here, and air would pass by the media. And I felt like that kind of did one of those wet-dry filters. Back in the olden days, we used to use wet-dry filters where you trickle down past all those bio balls. The dude that's breeding zombie clownfish, he's the one that's using that char filter. And so I thought, I'm just going to put some activated carbon inside this tiny little bottle, and I'm going to put those little holes that I used to do, and I'm going to put an airline hose down the middle, and I'm going to use this big giant sponge filter that I'm going to make sure it goes all the way to the bottom. Then I'm just going to take this when it's full of media, and it's got the airline straight down the middle with tiny little holes so that the air can pass by the activated carbon. Now I've got some activated carbon in the back of the tank there, and it's been in there for way too long, and all it's doing now is acting as a biomedia. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to fill this little tiny container up with it. Pretty cool. I like my little filter invention for a 5-gallon tank. I think it's going to be perfect. This thing has a little dip, and right along the rim it's up high, and so that's where the air is going to want to settle in. So we're going to go ahead and put the holes right at the peak. Alright, there we go. So you can kind of see that's where we want the air to escape from. And now we need a hole that the airline can go through. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it sit right in there. There we go. And now the air tube, the airline will fit right in there. Snug as a bug in a rug. Now this bottle is pretty small. Now we have to get our charcoal media and fill that up. We'll put it in this plate. This little zipper is so cool because it's all plastic. It was meant to go in an aquarium. Pretty slick. Here's the charcoal media that I've got in there. It's activated carbon, actually, is what it is. And it's not really activated anymore because it's been in there so long. So it's really just acting as a biomedia at this point. And since it's been in the tank for, I think, about 2 or 3 months now, because I've been too lazy to change it, it's definitely live, or it has microorganisms living in it, and so it will break down the ammonia that builds up in that tiny little tank. So I want the media loose inside, because when I connect it to this dude, we kind of need to shove it all together. I don't know what I'm saying there. What am I saying? Probably only filling it to just under here. I don't know if you can see in there, but it's just under here, just a tiny bit. I'll leave it there. That's good enough for me. What I might end up doing is just taking that out of there now and putting a new one in. Take this opportunity to not be too lazy. You know, I think I need to make a fresh cut on that. Let's put a fresh cut. Try and get it nice and even. So the way these things work is it has a little plastic airline tube that's rigid down the middle, and then the air it'll go through this tube. When I connect it, the air is going to go through there, and then it's going to come up through the sides, and it's going to create a little vacuum, and then the water will go, because this will be over there, the water will go through the sponge, through the channel up here, through this, and then out of those little holes. So that's pretty cool little device using physics to work for you, the laws of physics. I'm going to pull too hard on that. I'm mostly going to push it. There. And now we have our little filter. So all we have to do, and so one of the things also, when you get the airline tube going, when you get the air going in here, if the air is too strong, it's just going to force itself out of these holes on the side, out of these slots, and then it's going to want to come out the sponge, and that's not what we want. So you need to adjust the air so that it's only coming out of these holes on the top, and then you know it's creating a vacuum for the filter. And the way you do that is you just add yourself a little, one of these little controllers. A little valve, an airline valve. Okay, where am I going here? We're going right up through this thing. Thread it on there. That's it. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And I'm fitting it over the bottom really tight because I don't want any air, or I'm sorry, I don't want any, I'm actually trying to bring the sponge so it fits below this little weight. This thing on the bottom is a weight, so when you put it in, it actually sinks. And I don't want any little fry, or pile of rotifers for that matter, to get sucked up in the bottom here and get stuck. So I'm pulling the sponge over the bottom, so kind of, yeah, just like that. So this part's not touching the bottom of the tank. It's actually the sponge is fitting solidly over the bottom. We need to plop this in the big tank so that way it can start developing or accumulating some nitrifying bacteria. That's what we want. So I'm just going to go ahead and plop it up in the corner there where there's a lot of flow, and we'll plug it in and get it going. Crutches are the worst. I highly do not recommend them. All right, so we're going to handle this gently. I don't want to just start pulling on the hoses. I hope it's going to work. I'm going to fill up with water and sink it a little bit. Look at that. That's pretty slick. I think this is probably one of the best little filters I've ever made. It's so tiny and compact. Switches are the worst. Oh my God. Reflection's the worst. The worst. Worst? Alexa, dining room off. Okay. Here we go. Nice and close up. We can see the bubbles are banging. If I try to get rid of the reflection there. It's not too bad for a little pump. The main thing that we like on this is we don't see any bubbles escaping through the sponge anywhere. All the bubbles are going straight up the chamber, which means it's sucking the water in. And because of the location that I placed it, my water circulates this way. It goes down to the right on the bottom, up to the left on the top. So it's all going to pass by this sponge. So we are going to build up and accumulate. That sponge is going to accumulate nitrifying bacteria rather quickly. That's the plan. That's the hope. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the eggs. This is day 2. You can't see them because I've got them nestled up. Really, I've got this this pot nestled right up to that anemone because we don't want dudes. These dudes right here, they're the culprits. They do sneak attacks. And I might have to enclose that pot a little bit better on the sides. Cutting the pot in half might not have been the best idea because of these little guys. Boy, they like those eggs. That nem does recede in the evening, which is why I'm concerned and need to put some more cover on that pot because I did cut it in half. Might have been better if I left a whole pot, but I just did not like the way that was working the last time. For the next batch, I have a whole pot that's just kind of sitting behind that rock, my beautiful rock, that cliff, and it's just waiting. So when I pop this out, I'll pop the next one back in, and we'll just get this cycle going until Spicy gets it right.
I was wondering why that ball kept getting bigger, and then it hit me.
That was awesome.